This morning we are celebrating Luke, the evangelist, the historian, almost certainly the doctor, and most definitely a companion to St. Paul on at least one of his missionary journeys. And throughout the summer, we have been reading excerpts from Paul's letters to the Romans and the Philippians. And if we followed the same track today, we would have had a couple of paragraphs from Paul's letter to Timothy, or possibly a reading of the Acts of the Apostles, which was written by Luke. But I have very deliberately chosen an Old Testament reading for this morning. Now, there are two reasons for this. The first one is that both the New Testament alternatives are essentially outlines of travel. One describes how Paul got from Phrygia to Philippi by a rather roundabout route, and the other lists all the places that Paul's companions have gone off to and solemnly gives instructions about what to do with his cloak, his books, and his parchments. Now, I did wonder about giving you a brisk 10 minutes on the first century significance of the difference between books and parchments. No? Oh, all right then, I won't do that. But who wants a travelogue when we've all had holidays cancelled, we've all had journeys disrupted, and we've all had our plans put on hold? But my main reason is that wonderful opening of Isaiah chapter 35, verse 3. "Open the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees." Well, that's me these days. And it up with another verse a few chapters further on, which says, "A bruised reed he will not break, and a dimly burning wick he will not quench." And which of us, in these extraordinary and uncertain times, isn't feeling rather like a dimly burning wick with feeble knees? We did everything we were to do. We shut ourselves in, we cut ourselves off from friends and relations, we cut ourselves off from Mass. We relied on Skype, we made phone calls, we sanitized everything, we worked from home, and we coped with the kids all day. And then very gradually, things started to ease up a bit. We came out, we met each other in gardens. Maybe we went back to the office, and we came back to church. Now, a lot of experts did tell us that there would be a second wave, but you know, I really hoped on that one proved to be wrong. But somehow, and not just with COVID, everything that we've worked and hoped for just seems to be disintegrating. Looks as though we're going to have to go through the same thing all over again, and none of us can do anything about it. It's not surprising if our wicks are rather dim at the moment. Now, many of us have been reasonably lucky so far. We have space to work, or if necessary, space to isolate at home. Maybe we've got a garden. Most of us have got the technology to keep in touch with each other, and we know how to make it work. And we're mostly not dependent just on universal credit or perhaps on 80% of the national minimum wage. But some of those people who were at particular risk are becoming worried again. And I suspect that inside, if we're honest, many of us are demoralized or resentful or even angry or all of the above. And there's nothing wrong with those feelings. It's healthy to recognize them and to own them and to talk about them. If anybody had told me a year ago that I would be unable to hug my granddaughters for nearly 6 months, that I wouldn't have sung a note aloud since June, that I could be fined for going to the pub for a drink or into the shop without a mask, I wouldn't have believed them. Nor would I have believed that I would willingly have accepted it all. We're not used to being so out of control of our lives. It's not easy to give up personal autonomy, especially when the instructions for doing so have been so confusing. But if this is hard, Isaiah is reminding us of something even more difficult and giving us hope at the same time. Sacrificing some personal autonomy for the duration of the pandemic is one thing. Placing ourselves fully in God's hands and asking him to lead and direct us and trusting him in everything that we do is far harder. But as Christians, this is exactly what we have committed to. It's way beyond not going to Wales for a half-term weekend or staying at home for a couple of weeks because a colleague has tested positive. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, which is what the threat of COVID must feel like to some people, I must put my trust completely in God, for you are with me. That goes far beyond one pandemic. It extends to every corner of our lives, who we are, what we do, who our friends are, the decisions we make, the opportunities that we grasp or let go. If God is to lead us, we have to listen to him and be alert for his direction. So often we fail to recognize it, or we're reluctant to follow. So often we have weak hands and feeble knees. But God does not abandon us. He doesn't snuff out that glimmer. He doesn't leave us behind. He doesn't give up on us. Isaiah reminds us that God will save us, and together we can make the wilderness flourish. Now, at the moment, that wilderness contains a lot of people who are really struggling. People who are lonely or frightened or depressed, whose work is on hold, whose jobs are lost, whose businesses have failed, whose homes are virtual prisons. It's full of key workers who have got to put themselves at risk yet again for the benefit of all the rest of us. Placing ourselves in God's hands means being open to all the ways that he wants to use us to bring healing and companionship and mercy and support and hope to others, however fed up and wobbly we may be. So, just as Luke helped and encouraged Paul through many difficulties, including that mysterious thorn in the flesh, which God would just never take away, let's look beyond ourselves. So we pray that God show us how we can help and encourage those people who are finding life exceptionally difficult. And we ask for the strong hands and the robust legs and all the vision that we will need for his service. Amen.